there's something about relationship, right? I remember when I first met Shay was talking about long-term relationship and being in a place long-term in order to actually see the change happen or for the foundation to be built. And I remember just, I put it like on my shoulder or in my heart and needed time with it.
Yeah.
And now that we're sitting here 10 years later, all still in relationship together, all still seeing like other things being built and from small seeds.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm thinking about then two quotes that Grace had on that roundtable discussion. And I was hoping to explore them with you.
Yes.
The first one is you have to use negative experiences as a way to grow your soul. What do you think about that? Have you seen negative experiences generate strategies for change? Let's start there.
For me, it feels like out of necessity. I do sometimes wish there were a lot less of them.
I was like, Lord, my soul is grown enough this year. I would like a break on soul growth opportunities.
Sabbatical this year.
I'm taking a sabbatical. I'll be back. That's literally what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm like, soul growth, completion. I need a break.
I mean, that's the gist. Is like I'm grateful to have the courage a lot of times to flip the script.
Yeah.
But I wish the script would sometimes lay off, and not be as challenging. Like like if I revisit Detroit's dominant narrative as an example and the impact that's had on so many generations, like at least two, I'll say, generations in Detroit, and how much re-spiriting has had to happen and continues to have to happen because folks that are the Yelder generation, talking about language.
I love
elders. Us young elders, which I think that's something I've seen shift, is that we've taken on a lot more responsibility to be kind of like a nucleus between elders and young people. And I've seen like this very like bubbling up of our generation of taking accountability. Because there was kind of like a bit of a gap, it feels like, in like transferring that social justice. Of course, there were the Mama and Nebs that, cause never stopped. But I remember being in the generation of folks that you went and you got the job because now you can get the job. And I missed a lot of transference of knowledge and social movements and things like that. And I didn't go to college. I didn't stay in college, so I didn't get it through academia. But I will say that like the whole trying to have to always respond and react to harm, and think on the bright side, like I think Detroit's long overdue for just bright side, to be honest with you.
Shane Bernardo sent around a piece. Did anybody else get this today? It came around yesterday or fairly recently. It's about it's a critique of the dominant discourse narrative resting on the white savior of Detroit. And it's a really very pointed discussion of Phil Cooley and Dan Gilbert. But one of the things that popped out at me was Dan Gilbert didn't start purchasing until 2010.
Whoa.
So in this decade, I know it feels like it's been here forever. I know. It's like,
wow.
But as the social forum was unfolding, Dan Gilbert was moving into downtown. And I was stunned by that because in this decade, he has now purchased over 100 buildings in Detroit. And the incredible economic power that he has consolidated, and the incredible. Jenny's like, is that possible?
No, I'm thinking, what was it? Because like, where does that fall in the timeline of emergency management?
Well, it was
Is that right
four years before emergency management.
Okay.
But in that first 4 years, he only got 30 some buildings.
Yeah.
During emergency management, he bumped it up to 101.
Wow.
So
that's in the core of the downtown.
It's in the core of the downtown.
The wave.
Yeah, he rode the wave,
create the
and
wave.
he helped create the wave.
Yeah.
So in terms of the negative, I think there's not only, all of us have experienced lots of negativity, but the consolidation of economic power downtown in the hands of very, very few people is one thing to look at, as well as the extraordinary viciousness that has happened from the city administration. I mean, in 2010, I felt perfectly comfortable going to the city council to say, could we have a resolution for the U.S. Social Forum? And there would be no question that you would get that.
Well, there were members on the council who would say yes,
Who would
of
say,
course.
yes, of course. And
Yes.
now we've got,
Yeah.
the folks who tell us to go get water from the river is what we've been through. And so this viciousness and consolidation of power is a part of the negative that has forced us into some of these creative spaces.
Yeah, that's what change making is all about, right? Isn't it a response to something that's threatening or undermining or depriving or whatever, and we say, what can we do, right? What can we do? Bringing our creativity to the situation.
Yeah, so the social forum was also what I thought of in response to your question.
Yes.
From a different angle.
Hard.
In terms of like a negative experience, that was not without its positives. There was positives involved as well. But what I recall from 10 years ago is this discussion of whether or not it should come at all. Like that was a big question that kind of split people along different lines of some of us who were like, if it's gonna come, it should come in a way that's like allows for all of the resources of it to really seep into grassroots infrastructure and build over a long time. And then there was another kind of faction that was like, we have nothing to lose. We need the attention on our struggles right now. We need this thing to come and happen. And it did in a way that I think like broke a lot of relationships and caused a lot of harm. But then when I think about now, like some of the work that has grown in the past like 5 years-ish around community benefits and like the idea of a cultural CBA that is, that Halima has really led on, and Il and others, and Linda and the Equitable Detroit Coalition, it's now an expectation that if big events that purport to be progressive and social justice at least are going to come here, they have to engage on certain terms and they have to be investing in certain ways that are setting up, at least some likelihood that they're going to do more good than harm, which, I think, so if that's sort of a soul growth for like our movement overall that came out of that negative experience.
I also think there's something really huge about being inside the social forum experience and like local to it. It was like, we're struggling. And then whenever I run into people who are not from Detroit and they were there, they're like, that was a life-changing experience, right? And part of it was because of what they experienced in Detroit. And part of what I took away from that was like, we need better ways internally to understand how to feel our feelings and communicate with each other and have generative conflict, right? So for me, one of the positive or creative responses to like the social forum and kind of what fell out of it, because people were like literally in physical fights. I mean, there was like hard stuff that went down, but I also started learning generative somatics during that time and doing this work around like, what does it actually mean? Like, how do we reclaim our right to feel and our capacity to feel? And especially in this time. So I was just like I was like, I don't even need to make a list, but like starting to think about like, what are the pressures that we have been under, and particularly since the 2016 election, just like now it's like fascism is everywhere and uncovered. People are not afraid to just be acting from that place. White supremacy, white nationalism, white militant behavior. It's like everything is unleashed. Black people are being killed by the police daily in a way that it's like everyone's just watching. Like I feel like I was thinking about when Ayanna was shot, it was still like and like I feel like the gasp has gone away because stuff is happening so frequently in this period. And so there's something also about like the amount of pressure, like global, national, local, like it's like what we're experiencing on a local level is like very much tied into like this is a global pattern of hot messery, and all this attention is going towards the wrong things when it's like we need to get back in right relationship with this planet before we go extinct. Like, so how do we feel all of that and not take it out on each other, which is a lot of what I thought was happening in the social forum. Was really there was a lot of major class distinction and class difference that was getting acted out in these ways, instead of being able to turn and be like, here's how I feel about the privilege differences that are happening here and how are we going to work together. So I love that I've gotten to watch multiple cohorts of people now come through somatics in Detroit as tangible like coursework and skill development. And I've seen so many more people turning to be like, how do we have conflict in good ways? And I think that's both, you know, I think about money that has flown into the city and trying to work and collaborate around those resources and be like, oh, there's this quote that it's included in emergent strategy, but it's tattooed on Rihanna's clavicle. And I always talk about that, never a failure, always a lesson. And I feel like that's been a major grabbing of this past decade, has been like, there's these things that like, in the moment of experiencing them, I think there are things that were like, this is a massive fail. Like we are not partnering well, or this is not how we want it to look. And I feel like we have harnessed the lessons from those things so that I can't imagine going that way now, even though there's still tensions. I mean, there's stuff that happens where we're like, that's a growing pain, but it's not a breaking pain. It's not going to break us. So yeah, I'm excited about those things.
I think that is like really important to name just the growth in the past 10 years of people's attentiveness to mental health, interpersonal conflict, all the somatics work, the healing justice work, and that healing by choice. You know, it's just like, and like how that ties
There's a
to,
collective
like,
of healers.
there's a collective of healers. You know, like there's you know, when we have go-to like resources, like, oh, we need to have a transformative justice moment now. Like, let's bring in the safety team. Let's do, you know, and like it's more of a smooth process. And I think that is part of what comes with this. It's tied to the influx of resources we were talking about earlier. It's like very exciting, and it's like feels very powerful and good that there's more resources flowing in. But there's a moment at which I think you realize like, oh, we could have all the money in the world, and if we're not fixing like these dynamics between people, then the most radical visions will not, you know, we could have all the people, we could have like a million people in the streets, but if we're not right with each other and we can't talk to each other, we can't like be honest about our, you know, emotional realms, then like we're going nowhere. And that's been a major thing I've seen so many people.
And even knowing how to disrupt a moment, because when I look back at so much of the conflict that was happening about 10 years ago, a lot of it was rooted in a repression of feeling, right? Like people were mad and they were not operating in an integrous way to say that. Like, I'm mad. I don't like how you spoke to me. That was disrespectful, whatever it was, and just pushing that down. And I feel like that personal disruption moment of being able to say out loud, this is not okay, this has to stop, whatever it is, to break a pattern of harm before it gets to a place of now this is a movement problem or this is a community-wide problem. And I think we have a lot of room to grow. But I know, you know, something I've done in the last 10 years is a bunch of kitchen table mediation, right? Where I've just been like, I see these two people in Detroit. I know they love each other. They are beefing on the internet. Come sit at my table. And that idea of like, oh, we each have to be responsible in some way for each other, right? What is it we know how to do? Let's come. And for me, I'm like, I can't take on, you know, I'm not going to go in the city council space. Like I don't have the discipline. I go into those places and I'm just like, you know, like a whole different Sasha Fierce comes out. But I can sit at my kitchen table, and at my kitchen table I can feel very grounded. You know, I think about coming to your space and the healing that happened in your home, and how it's like, you know, it may not make sense for you to be holding a room full of 300 people, but the way that you can hold one body or the way that you can hold a collective of 10 is deeper than anything I've ever experienced. So I feel like there's something about like that, like finding like the place where it's like, oh, how do I lean in?
Which role can I play best here?
Exactly.
Or which one of my many possible roles?
Yes. And what's needed in this
What's
moment.
needed in this moment?
And how it's more humble to deliver it, right? Like it's not egotistical to deliver what you have
What
to
you
give.
know how to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, I'm glad you raised that, Adrian. I have the heart. So I'm a person that used to have like minimal boundaries.
Uh-huh.
Like I'll be honest.
Welcome to the
like,
club.
Yeah, like I don't even think I knew what a boundary was for like a long time,
Yes.
and I'm still struggling with it, to be honest with you. But
I know.
and so with that, there's
I know.
with that's a whole separate.
I know. I
meeting.
love it. We're working on it. You know, one
That's
birthday at a
part
time.
3. But I in trying to self-empower and practice boundaries, I found myself like cutting, like I have to cut these relationships.
Yeah.
Like I have to cut them.
Yes.
And I might even love the person, or I don't know. Or maybe I don't know what love was at that time, so I'm not sure if I love the person. So, you know, just going through that. But I do constantly find myself in conversation with myself about like, is this person someone worth spending more time figuring out and resolving it? Or should you just, you know, and so that has been complicated because I'm very attuned to harm.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, if they're going to continue to like create harm, then I don't think that I can, like, I don't, you know, so I'm still struggling with that. And, but I also wanted to talk about this other major thing that happened, in the last decade with Occupy. And I remember, I think that was one of my early introductions to Jenny, probably. I don't know.
We definitely met through
around that
music.
time. Yeah.
Around the time of Occupy.
And I remember I had my first like viral situation because I wrote this open letter on Facebook to like the Occupy movement, and it was just me ranting about like being like this mother who could barely make it because I had leaped and left my corporate job, all this other stuff. And people were like coming at me like I was new to the social justice movement, and people were coming at me like, if you're not about the move, if you're not gonna lay on the concrete, you're not about the movement. And I like just lost it, and I just wrote this letter, and then like all these Occupy movements from around the world were like reaching out, and it was just like, I was like, whoa, what's happening? This is like tripping me out. And so and then Grace sent the letter out, and I was like, oh, Grace Boggs sent the letter out. Like, you know, just like, what's going on in the world? But that gave me, like, as much as that was like little rage and triggering and like, oh, I'm gonna regurgitate all these feelings, it was a moment of empowering. So if I think back into other situations, like it was pain, but then I was like, whoa, I actually have something to say that like these folks might want to hear, and it's just my experience, you know, and that's enough.